can hold and won't let go of us now.
Something here is calling us forward, upward motion. We're drops in one ocean. Roll on.
Will you rise up with me today? Lift up your voice
And boldly say,
we are the ones we've been waiting for. Live the dream of your highest calling. Be the hope of a new day dawning. We're the ones who can make a difference. Let's stand together. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's the moment for our break.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am Barbara Fields, Executive Director of the Association for Global New Thought, and I'm thrilled about this evening's program. It's the second in a series of what will be going on for most of this year with Mendhi Audlin about building community on purpose, and she is our expert, as far as I can tell, doing some of the best work in the field that we have seen so far. And you are all lucky enough to be able to take advantage of this and also watch the recording. If you want to revisit some of this material, it'll be posted on our website. We'll let you know about that tomorrow. So before we begin, I always like to open with a blessing or invocation from someone in the New Thought community. And I'm going to check here and see if one of our friends that we had warned about this might want to help us out. And she is not here right now. And I hesitate to call on anyone without their permission, but if there's a minister attending tonight who would like to give a brief opening invocation for our session, could you please raise your hand and I'll put you on the screen. Any volunteers? Licensed practitioners? Unity teachers? Okay, well, I guess I'm going to ask you, Mendhi. Oh, here we have Diana Kennedy. I'm going to put you on the screen and ask you to bring us in with a brief opening invocation, Diana. You need to be unmuted, though. Can you unmute yourself?
There now. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, let's just settle in for a moment and take in a gentle breath. We may have had a long day.
Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I guess.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Okay, go right in. Go ahead.
We'll just settle in for a moment and take in a gentle breath and let it all go. Any worry or concern, any busyness from our day, and we'll settle into this time and the purposes for this gathering. And so we drop our awareness fully into our heart with gratitude. So grateful to be together, to connect. We open up to the wisdom and power of Spirit and know that we are coming to this time feeling good, and we're going to leave feeling even better after we learn and grow and share. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you so much for that. So I was going to ask if Stephen Pope would introduce Mendhi for those of you who haven't met her before. And Stephen, if you would go ahead and begin.
I would be happy to, yes. Mendhi Audlin, who we'll be hearing from, is an inspirational speaker, author, and consultant in the area of personal development and spiritual leadership. She is the creator of the Spirit Groups small group ministry program, providing leadership training for mission-driven individuals and organizations through the use of her 5 spiritual disciplines for personal and organizational growth and her STEP STEP model for membership engagement. Mendhi has spoken to audiences around the world about the power of positive thinking and the benefits of small group support systems. She is the founder of the What If Up Club, providing inspiration and support for what she calls possibility people around the world. Mendhi is a pioneer for personal and spiritual growth and development. In 2004, she launched Unity Online Radio, which was formerly Unity FM, where she hosted her first weekly broadcast, The Leading Edge. As the network producer, she grew the network to more than 20 programs, 100,000 listeners, reaching people in more than 60 countries.
Thank you, Stephen. So with that, I'm going to ask Mendhi to go ahead and begin for this evening. Mendhi?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Stephen. And Diana, I was sitting here looking at the list of participants saying, oh, Diana's here. I hope she prays us in. So thank you for that lovely invocation for all of us. And it is wonderful to see you as I'm scrolling through our participants. I see some familiar names and I see some new names, and I want to welcome all of you and thank you for being part of this online salon. This is an interactive salon, and I have on my screen, the chat is open, the questions are open, and I love hearing from you and having this be really a dialogue amongst colleagues. So the purpose of this salon, for those of you who are continuing, we had one last month, we are continuing to talk about this topic of how do you build spiritual community. And if you joined us last time, if you didn't, it's recorded, so you can go to the recordings and see what you missed. Last time we talked about mission and beginning with that clarity of focus on what are you here to do as a spiritual community. And so I was thinking, what is the next step for this? And to me, the next step is identifying, creating, cultivating a culture for your organization that is aligned with that mission that you've identified. So that's what we'll be focusing on today is what is the culture of your spiritual community, and are you creating that culture on purpose, or is it kind of an accidental culture and you're just kind of going with the flow and seeing what shows up? So this is about how do you drive your culture. If you're seeing things in your culture that are not really in alignment with who you're envisioning yourself to be, what do you do about that? And then how do you consciously create the culture that does attract the people that you want in your community? So thank you all for joining. And as you can see, Barbara's here in the chat, and it's great to be able to interact with you. So I'm going to throw out a question for you to give you some food for thought and to help you connect with each other. So in the chat room, for those of you that are in chat, or you can use the questions as well. My first question for you is, one, give you a chance to introduce yourselves to each other, share your name, where you're from. It's fascinating to me to see where you're from. From our last salon, I had people from all over the world connecting and sharing their ideas, which was so exciting. So your name, where you're from, and then here's my question. We always do, and I love small groups, we always start with a check-in. So my check-in question for you today is, if you were to choose one word that best describes your culture of your spiritual community right now, what is the word that comes to mind that best describes the culture of your spiritual community? So I thank you, all of those of you that are, I already see you in the chat room, and it's great to connect with you. Share where you're from and share what is your word. If you were to pick one word that best describes the culture of your spiritual community. I am the spiritual leader of Unity at Red Rocks here in Morrison, Colorado. And I think for me, the word that best describes our community right now is growth. We are in a significant growth mode, and we're feeling the stretch of that, and we're feeling the joy and the excitement of that as well. So evolving and growing, very exciting. Anticipation, that's a great word to notice. What is the energy when someone walks into your community? What do they feel? What do they sense? Without even, culture is something that you don't tell people what your culture is. They experience it. They feel it. It's that sense of when people walk in and they say, there was just something about that place and it just felt, what did it feel like? Inspired from Unity Arts Ministry. How appropriate that people would feel inspired by Unity Arts Ministry. So North Florida is growing. Fayetteville, Arkansas is evolving. Santa Barbara, the culture is anticipating all kinds of wonderful, great things. So thank you all for checking in with each other. And throughout, one of the nice things about having this forum and this online salon is that it does give us an opportunity to connect. So it's not a one-way conversation, that you can engage in this with each other, even as we're engaging with you here. Of course, as you have questions, feel free to post them in the questions section. So we're talking about culture. Oh, Jennifer says transformation is her word. That's awesome. Transformation. So what is culture and how do you identify it and how do you create it? How do you cultivate it? And are you cultivating it on purpose? To me, culture is something that is magnetic. And just like a magnet, a powerful magnet, if it's in alignment, it can be a very strong attractor. When it is reversed, it also is a very strong repellent. So when you have a very clear, very strong culture, those who are a good fit for that will flock to you. And this is almost as much of a benefit, those who are not a good fit will know that they're not a good fit. It's not a surprise to them. They don't have to attend for 6 months before they know that it's not a good fit for them. They'll know right away and they'll find another place that is a good fit for them. So I see, Catherine's here from Santa Fe. Hello, Catherine. Welcoming is their culture. That's beautiful. Great ways of describing your culture. Let's see. The men's ministry, creating cultures around healthy masculinity. Love that. Ministerial students. So thank you for joining, everybody, and thank you for sharing the culture that you're walking into. So the first thing, and here's where we're going to go. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about the elements of culture, and if your culture is not exactly what you want it to be, how you can shift it. We're also going to talk about some of the things that we do, specifically through our Spirit Groups program, to create a very specific culture, and I'll share with you the 5 elements of the culture that we create. It's wonderful to see so many of you. Lincoln, Nebraska, their word today is courage. We are bravely releasing our old building and buying a new house for our church on Thursday. All right. Yes, congratulations. It's so exciting to see all the things that are happening in our New Thought movement. So thank you for being here and for sharing and connecting, because this is the culture that we are creating, not just for our individual communities, but for the New Thought movement. This kind of synergy and collaboration, you're bringing that to this party. So thank you for being here and for sharing and engaging. So why does culture matter? Well, here's one of the beautiful things about culture. When you have a strong culture, when you have an intentional culture, it is a magnet, and it's a magnet for the people that are your tribe, the people that really resonate with your message, that resonate with your leadership, that are on board with your mission and your vision and your values and all those core things that you're about. When your culture is strong and clear and focused, it's easy for people that are a good fit to find you. Now, the challenge I think we have sometimes in New Thought is we want to be a fit for everybody. It's like, how many of us have a value of being inclusive? We want to be inclusive. And so sometimes we will water things down, or we will adapt or change to whatever people want us to be, so that we don't send anyone away. But actually, the opposite is true. If you can be very clear in who you are and what you are about, it is a much more powerful point of attraction. So some people will not be a fit, and that is, if we can be okay with that, then what that does is it opens the space for those who are. Australia is in the house, an ordained divine science minister. So welcome, Jim. New Thought is very small in Australia for now, and most of the state are members of Victoria, are members at Unity. Well, that's wonderful. So Diana says she can't see all the posts, so I'm sharing as we go, but hopefully you're able to see. I think when you post to the chat, you have an option if you want it to be private or not. If I read it, obviously it's not that private. So I'm going to share the things that are appropriate to share, but this is really wonderful, and I appreciate everything that everyone is contributing to this conversation about your culture. So there's the sense of culture that we think we have. The first thing I want to talk about is, are you sure that that culture that you're sensing is the culture that others are sensing? So a really great thing to do, one of the things that we've done, and we do this as part of our spirit groups training, we have the first time welcome people, there's these little lists of things that, what are people looking for when they're new? And so one of the things that we've done at our Train the Trainer events is we usually have a host church that brings us in, and a lot of us are new to that church. We've never gone to their Sunday service. And so what we do is we all sneak out the back door from our training, and when Sunday service begins, we sneak in the front and we come in as visitors. When you're with a community every Sunday, you forget what it's like to be new. And it's really wonderful and really valuable to be able to put on those newcomer eyes every now and then. Because when you're new, you see things that the people that have been there for years or weeks after weeks, we don't see anymore. So we go into a new community, we put on our new eyes, and we walk in. And here's what was fascinating about that, because we'll have an experience, and then we all get together after the service and we debrief. And what I found is that a lot of times people will feel like, okay, our community is welcoming, it's generous, it's whatever those words might be. And sometimes we'll be in a community and people's experience as a newcomer matches completely. In fact, a lot of times people will come in and say, it was better than I ever imagined. People were so welcoming, they were so loving, they were so open-armed. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes what happens, though, is something different. I'll have ministers or ministries that say, we are very welcoming, and people are here 30 minutes early, and everybody's in the fellowship, and they're all welcoming and talking. But when our newcomers come in, they're not welcomed. And when I say that, not in a negative, like we're not welcoming you, but people just have their cliques. And so sometimes what feels like a welcoming culture, when you come in new and don't know anybody, it may be a different experience. So a really great thing to do when you're assessing your culture to see, is this culture really what I think it is? Because, I walk in as, spiritual leader, I have this bubble of activity around me, and things, show up a certain way when I'm around, and I don't know what it's like when I'm not around. So it's great to be able to test that out. So here's your first challenge for the month. I'll give you some homework to play with. Whatever word you put as your culture, how you would describe your culture, I'd invite you to go to someone who's been going to your church for a long time. Maybe one of your established leaders, a board member, a staff member, someone who's really ingrained in your community, and ask them the same question. Don't tell them what you said. Just say, if you were to describe our culture in one word, what would it be? And then go to someone who's a newcomer. Go to someone who's only been coming for maybe a few weeks and ask them the same question. Ask them, if you could describe our culture in one word, what would it be? And see if there's a match. Now, if you're really brave, here's the other thing I'd invite you to do, is find a visitor. Find someone who's visiting for the first time, and get permission. Ask them if you can survey them with one quick question. If they could sum up your culture in one word, what would it be? And notice if they fit. Barbara, yes.
I would just like to ask a clarifying question about this. So when you speak about culture, it seems as if you're talking about the feeling tone or the environment that someone's walking into, not so much about the content of your message or the mission of your organization. Could you clarify that a little? Because I honestly, my own response to it is, I don't know exactly what it is you're talking about when you use the word.
So some of your culture is the content. Are you Bible oriented? Are you more interfaith? Are you social justice oriented? So that's part of your culture. Your mission is clearly part of your culture, especially if your mission is alive. So if you're using your mission, for instance, one of our participants said that the culture is transformation. Well, that is the core of our mission statement. So that if I hear our culture is about transformation, then I know that the mission is very much alive and being fulfilled. So it's really, it's everything. It's the entire experience of, it's that which you can see and say, okay, well, there's a color scheme and there's the brand, but it's really beyond what we see, and it's beyond the framework of it. It's that feeling that binds it together. It's the experience that you walk away with. It's sort of the intangible, but it also, I almost said it doesn't happen by accident. Sometimes it does. And that's really what this session is about, is you can have a culture that's sort of created by default, or you can have a culture that's created by design. So here's the difference. If I have a culture that's created by default, what I do is I just let people show up, and whatever people want to bring to it, they bring to it. And that's what it is. So the culture is more reactive than proactive. And that's fine. I've been parts of beautiful, loving communities that's what they do. The challenge with that is that you can have one person come in and, it can change the dynamic of the entire organization. If you have one person come in with an agenda, or one person come in with, a lack consciousness, or one person come in who's very critical or judgmental, it can throw the entire culture off. So this is really about, how do you get proactive? How do you purposefully design your culture in alignment with your mission, so that you can identify when things show up and they don't quite fit. And so part of this is your mission, as you mentioned. Part of it is having a clear sense of vision of what you want to do together. We're also really expanding here into the realm of your values. And I'll share with you, at Unity at Red Rocks, I have been there for 6 months. When I started, the first thing we did was we revamped the mission statement. We shortened it, we clarified it, we got it a little more focused, and we started actually using it. We then created our small groups, and we held off on values. And the reason we've held off, we're actually just now getting into looking at our core values, because values, to me, they emerge from your experience. So as I've been there these past 6 months, I've been looking at, what are the things that are already in our culture, because this has been a culture pretty much by default, from what I can tell. They had values, but people don't know what they really are. So if we're going to create this culture on purpose, we want to look at the things that are already there that are good. What are the things that already make this community unique? And how do we put words to that? How do we describe what that is that we're doing that really is our strength, that really is something we're proud of? It's something that is unique and special about us. So we're identifying those things. And at the same time, we're identifying those things that, and I'm identifying things that I'm seeing, and I'm like, this scenario happened, and it's not the kind of culture that we want. So if you notice triangulation, if you notice gossip, if you notice a lack mentality, or you notice things that are kind of happening that you're like, that's not really in alignment with our principles, that's not really in alignment with our mission, which is transforming lives through the power of love. So what value is not getting expressed there? That if we were clearer on what our core values were, we could shift this culture. We could get things more in alignment, and we could be able to put words to, this is not quite what we're looking for. So thank you for that question, Barbara. And if anyone else has questions as we go, this is a great time. So are you being proactive in creating your culture? Are your values alive? And I say that, our mission, we talked last time about mission, is your mission alive? Your mission is alive because it's in the vocabulary of the people that are participating. They understand. In our case at Red Rocks, people talk about transformation. They talk about love. They talk about what love is going to do on Sunday morning and what love is going to do through their small groups. So the mission is very much alive. We're working now on our values and looking at our experience together to identify what those core values are. Now, you may have a core values list that is, we value love and diversity and harmony, abundance, whatever those words are. We're taking that a step further to be able to say, what does it mean? What does it mean if we say we value love, or we value abundance. A great example for this, I do a lot of leadership podcasts. I study a lot of different ministers and a lot of different denominations. One of my favorites is Craig Groeschel, and he has a core value in their organization of generosity. And so they talk about, I think they practice irrational generosity, which I love that phrase of irrational generosity. They give when there's no reason to give, and that's a part of who they are. So when you're making decisions, anytime you're having a hard time making a decision, it's great to say, and I've noticed this in our own organization, I'm trying to make a decision and it's difficult because I don't have the value system to guide it. So then I ask myself, what is the value that we need to have in place to make these types of decisions easier? So it's not just here's what Mendhi wants for our community, but these are our values that govern the community. And so our decisions are based on that. For example, my personal values, my 3 personal values, my top 3 are excellence, fun, and authenticity. And so in this first 6 months, it's been interesting for me to notice that when I don't have a core value from our organization to lean on yet, I go to my own, of course. So I always, I choose excellence over, sometimes over harmony. I'll choose excellence over, over other competing values. So this is just a great opportunity to be raising your consciousness around, how do we make decisions? And when we make decisions that are difficult, what values could be in place that would make those decisions more clear? So, any questions so far? And remember, you can chat and share at any time. Let me share a couple tips for you on building conscious community and creating your culture on purpose. So one of the things that I hear, and this is again going back to creating by default, if you find yourself, and I came into a culture where we caught this very quickly, we would say something like, we set some goals for the new year. We set some goals for giving. So we wanted to get our membership onto an automated recurring giving platform. We also set some goals around volunteerism and engaging our members into different service teams. So the board came together, we created this vision for what we wanted to see, we set our specific goals, we scheduled our town hall, we made our presentation, and everybody smiled and nodded and clapped their hands, and at the end of the day, no one signed up for ongoing recurring giving, and nobody signed up for a volunteer role. So here comes the next board meeting, and we all sit together and we say, okay, let's look at what just happened here. What happened? And so the initial response, the initial culture, what we were used to doing was saying, well, I don't know why they aren't doing it. What's wrong with them that they aren't doing it? And we identified that and turned that around. And so we said, we're not going to point to them and what's wrong. We're going to point to us and what can we do differently. So how have we not led them into the vision that we so clearly see? And what do we need to do as leaders to lead them into this vision that we see so clearly? We've put it out there, but either we haven't made it compelling enough, we haven't made it easy enough, but we are taking responsibility for the culture that we want to create, and we're not casting blame. And I hear this a lot of times in communities where we hear things like, our people just aren't tithers, or our people don't volunteer, our people don't do things outside of Sunday. And I hear that sometimes when churches are talking about small groups. No, we can't do that. Our people don't engage like that, and we're disempowering them when we have a vision for what we want to create, and we're enabling them to not engage in it. So our first question that we ask ourselves is, what can we do as leaders to lead them into the vision that we are holding, to empower and to know that if we're capable of seeing it and getting excited about it, so is everybody else that's out there. So taking responsibility for our culture. So if it's not a healthy culture, what do you do to turn things around? So there's this concept, there's actually a TED Talk, and this is really worth checking out. And Barbara, maybe I can send you the link to this so you can share this in our resources. There was a TED Talk about early adopters. It was about how do you create a movement. And what they found is this video. It's like this guy's out at an outdoor concert, there's the green grassy hill where everybody's just sitting out there listening to the music, beautiful day. And someone just happens to have their camera rolling, and they scan over to the far side of the grassy hill. And there's this guy up there in the middle of nothing. He's just out there and he's just dancing, and he's just, being free and being himself. And, he's the crazy guy on the hill who's doing his dancing thing. And then, so he's taking a picture of it, like, look at this weirdo up there doing this dancing thing. And then something interesting happens. Another guy stands up and starts doing the weird, crazy dance with him. And as soon as he does, the first guy's like, dude, yeah, awesome, cool. And they cheer each other on. And now there's two weirdos up there on the hill doing this crazy thing. And the second guy waves one of his friends in. Now there's three guys up there. Next thing you know, three girls come in. They start dancing with the guys. Next thing you know, a bunch more people come, more people come, more people come. And you have this movement. Suddenly, in the span of about 3 minutes, what used to be the weird guy on the hill, now when you scan the crowd, you see all the fuddy-duddies that are still sitting down. Like, why aren't you dancing? Why aren't you up there with everybody else? Because the majority of the people were up there having this wonderful, fun, great time. So it's a wonderful way of seeing how does a movement get started. And what the point was is it's not the person on the stage. It's not your minister. It's not the person who's out there, the weirdo alone on the hill. He didn't start the movement. Who starts the movement? It's the first followers. It's the people who are the first ones to step in and say, that's cool. I want to be a part of that. Those are the ones that are so important to creating your movement. And I will say, Barbara, I was with you at the Unity Village Chapel when you had your big event, and you had all this wonderful music, and you had the entire team there, everyone giving talks, and it was this packed house, and the music was amazing. And there was one guy, he sat on the aisle in the center, and I watched him because every time the music would kick in, there was drumming, there was beautiful music. Every time he would get moved, he was the first one to stand up. He was the first one to clap his hands. He was the first one to get up there and just really cheer on everything that was going on. And people would watch him, and I would say, I went to him afterwards and I actually said, do you realize how important you are to the movement? When we work with our congregation and our membership, we talk about what it is to be an early adopter, to be one of the first followers. And our membership knows how important it is that when you see someone get up and start clapping their hands, stand up and clap your hands, because the first people that do it are the ones who create that movement. Barbara, yes, want to jump in?
Yeah, well, since I can, I have ultimate control over this vehicle. What it made me think about is, because AG&T itself is in a very formative period right now, we're offering a renewed mission that has to do with spiritually guided social change and activism. Because as a combination of Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living and AG&T, and we don't have to follow the mandates or one or another kind of mothership organization. And so, but it's still kind of a hard introduction to the community, especially a community of churches whose mandate for decades and more, millennia even, has been that the church is a sanctuary that's separated clearly from the challenges of the social community and politics and all those other dirty words, right? And we know that we have to transform that process, but the only way to transform it is to engage in it and to model the change. In other words, like Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see. And so New Thought churches, if they have the secret of consciousness to bring into their social challenges, then they can't sit back and separate themselves holding on to that consciousness and not sharing it in public with their communities. And so it reminds me that right now we've asked some churches to step up and take part in this film screening on February 25th, White Like Me. It's a story of American white privilege. And to have so many churches decide to screen it locally and then get online afterward for a dialogue, well, I just have to say that we have about 25 early adapters or early adopters in the New Thought community, that risky as this might be for them and for their congregation, they stepped up, and they're like the cream floating to the top, because they're the ones that are going to make this mission viable. And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's such an uplifting feeling.
It is, and that is exactly what we're talking about. Is it takes, if you have, if it's one person doing it, that's one thing. But when you can have 2 or 3, and then 10 or 12, and then it's 25, and next thing you know, when we're coming together and collaborating, now we have a movement. And I have some questions. I'm not sure how to say your name. I don't know if is it Eamon? So give me a pronunciation if I'm not right. I'm going to say Eamon. But he's asking, how many values do you work with? Is it 3 or 4, 7? How many? What's the magic number? I would say, so there's your core values, which are, what are the values of your organization? And, maybe I wouldn't have more than you can remember. So maybe 4 or 5, 7 would be a lot, but I probably wouldn't go more than 7. But what are the most important things about how you operate? 5, I think, is a good number. It's kind of a random number, but it just seems like that's memorable. You want it to be able to be alive in your culture. But you may also have, here's what we're finding is, we're working organizationally in terms of creating our organizational values. But what I'm finding is, within my teams, there's also operational values. There's the values that we hold for how we interact with each other that are different than the values that we would have for the organization as a whole. The organizational values are, how do we operate? How do we fulfill our mission? What are we here to do? Do we want to be a mega church? Do we want to be a smaller church? Do we want to do small groups? What are the things that we want to do to create our mission and bring it to life? And then within that, you may have operational values. You may have subsets of values that are useful for different teams. He's also, Amen. Okay, I got you. Thanks for the pronunciation help. Amen. So what does STEP mean? STEP, as Stephen said when he introduced me, I have a model. It's called the STEP model. What it stands for is Strategic Transformational Engagement Process. And it's a process that we take people through as part of going from being a seeker, essentially, someone who's out there exploring a spiritual path, never even heard of New Thought, never heard of Unity or CSL, but is out there watching Joel Osteen and Oprah and the Soul Series, and eating at Whole Foods and buying organic stuff and shopping at local farms. And those people that are out there that are a good fit for us. We go from those people who've never heard of us, never walked in the doors of our communities, to how do you get them in the door? How do you get them engaged? How do you teach them what you're about? How do you engage them in that and have them practice it so that they become leaders who then can help other people through that model? So throughout the course of this year, we're going to be talking about engagement. That's actually going to come a little later on in the year. But that's what that's about. How do you engage people in your mission in a very strategic, step-by-step fashion? So part of that is cultural. And one of the things that is foundational to the strategy that we use is the small group model. So with small groups, Spirit Groups is a program that I use with churches all over the country and US and Canada. And I've now been connecting with people in Australia and all over the world thanks to this series. So the Spirit Groups program is designed to be a year-long. It never stops. It's not like a fall program or just a book study or book club. It's always going on, and it's a way that you can engage people, especially newcomers, into your community very quickly so they can make friends and get plugged in, come on Sunday and know somebody, which is really important. So part of what we do in our Spirit Groups program is we have what we call our 5 spiritual disciplines. So these are the foundation for the culture that we create through our small groups. So I'll share these with you since that seems to be where we're headed. Eamon, thank you for the questions. So in our Spirit Groups, we have a culture that's based on 5 disciplines. Here are the 5 disciplines. You ready? They all start with C, so that's your little hint. So the first one is communion. So in our small group practice, there is always a communion practice, which is a prayer, meditation. The groups can do whatever they want to do, but there's something that is reflective. It can be journaling. It can be a motivational quote, moving into silence. But there is a communion practice that is some part of every group session that we do. So that's one part of our culture through our spirit groups. The second element that we have is a connection piece. And connection is about building friendships. So we are intentionally helping people connect with each other in a way that is fun. It's not all heavy and deep. That we do social events together. We have food and snacks, and we party all the time. We have tons of parties and a great time together. That's part of our culture. So prayer, meditation, connection, fun, socializing. The third of our spiritual disciplines is compassion. So compassion means that through our small groups, we're not just coming together once a week, that we are actually connected with each other throughout the entire commitment of that small group series. So compassion means, like in my small group, someone is getting shoulder surgery today. So our group is reaching out and seeing if the family needs anything. Can we help with anything? We're thinking of you. We're holding you in our prayers. So that's, it's not our group meeting day, but we're still connected with every member of our group for the duration of our series. So that's compassion. The fourth element of our culture in our spirit groups is community. And one of the things that we do as small groups, through our small groups, is community service. And some groups, like you said, Barbara, we've got our social justice groups, and we've got people that's their passion. Other people may be more interested in environmental causes, and they may do things for the environment. Our group is a family group, so we do a lot of things to support children and single moms and things like that. Trying to think of some of the other groups that we've had. We have some of our service projects for our last season. A group did soldier boxes. So boxes they sent overseas to people in our military so that they would have some way of knowing that we were thinking about them over the holidays. We had one of our groups that did something for an assisted living home to share love with those residents and make sure that they had a very special Christmas. So community service is one of our cultural components. And that's the fourth. So we've got, see if you remember, we've got communion, connection, compassion, community. And then the fifth of our spiritual disciplines is challenge. And this is part of our culture where every time we get together as a new group, we all set intentions. We all set personal, spiritually focused goals or intentions for where we want to grow over the course of our time together. So no one is ever flatlining in their spiritual life, that we're constantly setting our next horizon. And then we have the support of our group to move forward and to turn that intention into a reality. So those are the five aspects, the five cultural aspects of our small groups program. Now, what we invite people to do is to have those be the basis of their own spiritual practice. So for me, as an individual, I work to have all five of those in balance in my own life. When I have my prayer practice, I have my time with friends, I have people that I care about that care about me, I've got my things that I do for the community, and I'm feeling challenged. My life is full, and I am spiritually alive and growing and having a great time. So those are the five spiritual disciplines. When they're in your life, then they show up in the group. When they're in the group, then they show up in your community. And when those disciplines are balanced in your community, you have a healthy, vibrant, growing community. And I actually, as I'm looking now, I'm seeing people in our participant list who are have been doing this for a while. In fact, I think as I look at my list, Glenda Thompson is here. Glenda is from Unity of Arlington. She went through the very first Spirit Groups Train the Trainer, and I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 years ago now. And they were one of the very first churches to take it on. So, Barbara, could we pull Glenda in? I did give her an invitation ahead of time. She is willing. So if we could pull her in, I would love for her to share a little bit about the culture shift that she's experienced over there in Texas. If you're there. Glenda, you're around? I don't know. I saw her there twice. I hope I didn't scare her away.
I'll go ahead. She signed in twice, so let me promote the other one to see.
Okay, let's see if that brings her in. Glenda is a trooper. When they first started using the groups at Unity of Arlington, they were in between ministers. So one of the reasons they wanted to do small groups, I see you there. There you are, Glenda. One of the reasons they wanted to do small groups was to keep the congregation together and solidified as they went through the transition. So Glenda, you want to share a little bit about culture and culture shift and what you've seen in your community and what's working?
I'm on the phone here. Can you hear me? It's echoing back. Ask me that question one time.
You first started when you first started with spirit groups. I was just sharing that your ministry was in transition, so it was a way to get people connected. We just talked about the 5 spiritual disciplines. So if you could just share a little bit about what is the culture shift that you've seen and what has facilitated that? What's been working for you?
Mm-hmm. Right now, we are in the process of going through the engagement strategy. We have really increased the number of people that have come to us. We have a new minister that's been there 2 years. So right now I can see the shift in the young families that are coming in. When we met today, our youth ed director was in the meeting, and I told her about your children's group, spirit group. She was very receptive to that, very excited about it, and something may come of that. But the shift for us in the culture, I think, has been one of and more inclusion in a different way. When you asked for one word, I would have described our culture as huggers. You know, we think if we hug everybody when they come in the door, we've done it. We've done our job. That's all we need to do is make them feel loved at the door. And then, you know, people either love that and do feel loved, or it turns them off and they go away. But, you know, we're developing a more of a sustained inclusion for people and providing them with opportunities to connect and to establish ownership for themselves. A lot of our new people are starting to take on jobs. You know, our church has been very focused on Sunday, and the balance has been very off for the rest of the place. You know, Sunday morning is terrific, but as far as our structure for volunteers and things like that, and trying to help people find their place and find where they can contribute, and then to support them through that, is really where we're lacking. So that's beginning to change with our engagement strategy. We're starting to look at what people need in that area outside the Sunday morning experience. So it's really exciting, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey, learning so much about what motivates people and what people really, and what it means to love people when they come in. You know, it means more than hugging. And sometimes it means not hugging, you know, but respect, you know, where people are.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Glenda, for checking in and for sharing. I will say that Glenda is my poster child for perseverance, where, you know, she had a ministerial transition that went on for a while, and she really held the vision and held, like, this is a system that if we just hold to it. So, and I think that's really important when you're looking at cultural change, is to know every community is different. Some communities, and I've seen this, I've seen ministers, even with very large congregations, who can go in, and because the culture is so adaptive and flexible and eager to change, I've seen ministers of large churches come in and say, I have an idea, let's do it, and everybody's on board, and that huge ship can turn around just like that. I've also seen churches that are very, very tiny. You'd think, oh, they should be so flexible, they should be able to shift on a dime, but there's a culture that is change averse. And so shifting a culture like that is a little bit more challenging. So being able to discern, what is my culture, and how open are people to change? What kinds of changes do they gravitate towards? Which kinds do they not? And then how do you hold the vision for what you want? And what we work with our churches, our spirit groups campuses, because so often culture change is the biggest hurdle that we come across. Is people like, well, that's not how we do things here. That's not what we've done before. And yet what they've done before may not be creating the results they want. It's still a change. So what we do is we get very clear on what is the culture that we want, what is the structure we're going to hold. We use the 5 spiritual disciplines through our groups, and then we put the energy towards the vision of what we want without trying to force everyone else to change. And we found that's kind of worked well. Is, we don't need to go tell everyone they can't do their old thing anymore, but we do shift. It shows up less and less in the Sunday announcements, less and less in the bulletin, less and less on the website, in the e-newsletters. We put less attention on the things that are not part of the culture that's emerging, and we put all of our energy and focus on that which is emerging. And what's happening, and Glenda spoke to this a little bit, is what I found is, as you start creating this dynamic culture that is, mission focused and doing things in the world that are important, that are relevant, as you were talking about, once you put that out there and have a structure where people can not just participate in it, but can lead that, now you have engagement. And usually where it starts, this is what I've seen in the churches I've worked with, it usually starts with your newcomers, people who want to get plugged in, who don't know anybody. It usually starts with your families, people with kids, wanting to connect with other people with kids, and next generation, your younger generations. They really resonate with the opportunity to step in, be given a vision, and given some structure for how they can then lead the vision. And I see others in our participant list, and I just want to invite any of you. I didn't really prep anybody and say, here's what we're talking about, but Catherine I see, and Diana's been to some of our trainings. If any of you want to share anything about what you've seen, and whether you've been through a spirit groups thing or not, if you have something you'd like to share about your own community and your own challenges or successes that you've had in shifting culture, would love to hear from anyone if you want to raise your hand or ask a question. So that invitation is out there. And give you a second to think about it. What has been working for you? And if you've been using any of the 5 spiritual disciplines, it's great to hear how those are working in your community as well. And I'll share a resource with you too. And of course, raise your hand at any time if you'd like to jump in. There was a book I read recently called Expensive Sentences. And I was drawn in by the title because it's a great thing to think about when you're looking at creating culture shifts, is what are the things that we say that are not in alignment with the vision for what we want to become. So, just a really obvious example we hear a lot in these church circles is you hear about the 80-20 rule, right? We all know about the 80-20 rule. It's like that whole sense that 20% of the people are going to be doing 80% of the work. So we had that come up in our community recently where someone brought up the 80-20 rule, and I actually started doing the math. I said, that is not the reality that we want. So we're not going to affirm that through our language anymore. And I actually did the numbers and found out what our percentages truly were. Because it seems like when you're doing a lot, it always seems like, oh, I'm doing everything and no one else is helping. But when we really looked at the numbers, we were amazed. We have over 50% of our membership in a leadership role, not just a service role, but in a leadership role in our community, with even more in service roles. So Jim Youngman, he says, there is much resistance to change. How does a minority group affect change without destroying what is already there? Beautiful question, Jim. And I will say there's two sides to this. One is that people don't always resist change. Have you noticed that, you ask people if they want to get some new clothes or a new car or buy a new house, and they're like, yes, that would be great. I'm about to get a new office. I'm so excited. It's going to change everything. And I'm excited about it. So, we got to look at, is that one of those expensive sentences, is that people resist change? People will resist some change, but they don't resist all change. And if we can identify what are the changes that people are excited about, we can start, reframing the way that we speak. Now, that being said, there are clearly things that that people are resistant about, and we have seen that in trying to create culture change. What we do, and again, this is great with minority groups, we create small groups for that minority. So all we need is 3 people. We have currently 3 families in my family group. Amongst these 3 families, we have 14 people. We've got parents and grandparents and children. So it's actually a massive small group, but it's just 3 families. So we brought together 3 families, and this has been the beginning of our youth program. We want to bring kids in. So now we have kids that are connecting through our small group. We have the foundation to be able to now grow a youth program. We did it with 3 families and a small group. Barbara, you want to jump in?
Yeah, it makes me think about something. It might, of the many memorable things that Michael Beckwith has said that has inspired me over time, there's one that is very apropos to what we're talking about here. And he just put forth the concept, and I'm sure that many of you have heard this before, that we no longer need or want to be pushed by the pain so much as we want to be pulled by a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a lovely sentence. I mean, it's just lovely and inspiring on every level. But when you unpack that, it's quite profound and practicable.
Mm-hmm.
In that there's no sense in dwelling on all the reasons for why the culture doesn't want to change, because
Mm-hmm.
then you really get into, as you said just a moment ago, Mendhi, why would you put your energy and consciousness on the thing that you don't want?
Mm-hmm.
And so the complaining or the negativity or the resistance and so on. But I find that somehow it seems to fly right out the window is the minute that you get your people engaged in a vision of what their own possibility actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when everybody comes alive and their eyes light up, and people can't wait to raise their hand and talk about what they would contribute to the vision. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the only way that I've ever seen change actually work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's so on point. And Jim, to follow up on your question about, how do you affect change without destroying what is already there? It sounds like what's already there is good. And so if you can identify what is that piece that you don't want to destroy and align all the changes to that concept, to that principle, whatever that is. So if that thing that you don't want to destroy is that you have a loving community or that you have deep connections, how do you create pockets that are in alignment with that, but that also expand that at the same time? So we're not destroying anything. So we're not stopping anyone from doing something that is feeding them. We are getting very clear on what is the culture we want, and we are putting our energy, like Barbara said, and our resources behind those things that are most fully aligned, and allowing everything else to be, not pushing back on those things. So that's the key.
So, Mendhi, we're coming toward the end of our hour, and I was just wondering if just take a minute and think, is there anything related to this topic that you want to be sure that you don't miss before we sign off for tonight?
Thank you. Yes, I just emailed Barbara. I do have a PDF that we're going to make available to you if you want to check it out. It is a spiritual self-assessment survey related to our 5 spiritual disciplines. So it's a chance for you to see how we use that in our groups, and for you to assess yourself, like, how balanced am I in these 5 principles. So Barbara is going to have that online for you to enjoy. I also would love to invite all of you to join me at Unity Village June 8th through 10th, we have an annual Spirit Group Leadership Summit for small group leaders or people thinking about doing small groups. If you want to learn more and to dive in and experience what's happening in our movement, and it is exciting, you can go to spiritgroups.org and click on the 2018 Leadership Summit to learn some more about that.
Thanks. I'm loving the comments in the chat, and I'm loving Diana's little emojis that she keeps sending us. That makes me feel good just looking at them. So we're gonna wrap up for tonight. And first of all, I'd like to thank you with all my heart, Mendhi, because you're giving of your time, and it's such a valuable resource, and we really appreciate you. So thank you. And I just wanted to remind everyone that you'll get in about 24 hours, you'll receive a notification from Zoom telling you where you can access the recording. And as Mendhi said, we'll also have her resource available in that same space on our website. The next meeting for this particular webinar is on March 13th, which is a Tuesday next month. And I'm sure you're all excited to hear what she has in store for us next. Now we're calling this whole series, we refer to them as online salons, because we do want them to be a place of retreat as well as learning, and a place where you can all bring your questions and comments and ideas, rather than just a one-way platform. You talk and I listen. That sort of thing is a thing of the past, and we all know that. But I wanted to make you aware that we have a couple of others that I'd like you to consider signing up for, because these are free. On March 5th, in our online salon called the Divine Feminine Peace Spa, our guest is Mrs. Ela Gandhi, who is the granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi. She'll be joining us from South Africa. She's actually joining us at 3 a.m. her time, so that she doesn't inconvenience our group. I tried to talk her out of it, but she wasn't having it. So and Temple Hayes will be leading the AG&T Leaders and Members Forum next Monday on February 26th. So if you want to go to the website, agnt.today, and just click on the menu item that says salons, you'll learn all about it. So I guess that's a wrap for tonight, and we're grateful to everyone who's participating and showing up, and we'll just see you all next time. Have a great month. Bye.